Kevin Stefanski once carried the aura of a calm, calculated leader. But Jason Lloyd's expose shattered that illusion, revealing a man caught in a power struggle he can't win, twice stripped of play-calling duties, second-guessed in real time by his own bosses, and now linked to the alleged orchestration of Shedeur Sanders' mysterious sidelining.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The dysfunction isn't confined to the locker room. It's rooted in ownership and management, where decisions are made not to build a winner, but to protect reputations and keep control firmly at the top. Lloyd's reporting paints a picture of a franchise rotting from its highest levels. With Haslam and Berry's fingerprints on nearly every questionable call, Stefanski becomes less a leader and more a pawn in a larger power game. Sanders' career, once a symbol of hope, is being smothered under the weight of mismanagement and fear. H&AB, the Browns' hierarchy has turned inward, choosing secrecy and denial over accountability, and it's only a matter of time before the entire operation implodes under its own corruption. The Cleveland Browns just got exposed, again, but this time it's worse than anyone thought. Thanks to Jason Lloyd, we now have a front row seat to what might be one of the most deliberate and destructive acts of internal sabotage in recent NFL memory. This isn't just about losing games. This is about a calculated, top-down effort to control narratives, bury talent, and protect power inside a franchise that's supposed to be focused on winning. According to Lloyd, this has nothing to do with football strategy and everything to do with ego, fear, and organizational decay. At the center of it all, Kevin Stefanski, general manager Andrew Berry, and team owner Jimmy Haslam. The target? Rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders, who, despite his obvious talent, is being kept off the field by the very people who should be developing him. And when Jason Lloyd says the situation is so chaotic, it deserves a 30 for 30. You know it's bad. Because this isn't just the kind of thing that gets fixed with a mid-season trade or a quiet front office shakeup. This is foundational rot. This is decades of quarterback dysfunction reaching a boiling point, and instead of finally correcting it, the Browns doubled down. Let's start with the injury, manipulation. Lloyd laid it out clearly. The Browns have gone out of their way to make Sanders' back issue the perfect excuse to keep him sidelined, even when there's little actual evidence he isn't ready. Flying him across the country for treatment? That's not a standard move. That's a smokescreen, a way to build plausible deniability, while they quietly ice him out. And then there's the media strategy. The Browns haven't just kept Sanders off the field. They've shaped the story around it. Vague updates, controlled leaks, carefully planted narratives that suggest he's not quite ready, not fully healed, or still developing. All of it designed to keep the fans from asking the obvious question. Why isn't Shedeur Sanders playing? Lloyd answers that question with brutal clarity, because his success would threaten the people in power. If Sanders steps on that field and proves he's the real deal, the entire house of cards collapses. Every failed QB experiment, every front office decision, every coaching misfire becomes impossible to hide. Sanders playing well will be the biggest indictment yet of how the Browns have mismanaged the quarterback position for years. And instead of facing that truth, they're doing what this franchise always does, protecting themselves no matter who gets hurt in the process. It's not just Lloyd's words. It's what's happening on the ground. Stefanski has reportedly been stripped of play-calling duties twice. That doesn't happen to a head coach in control. That happens to someone being micromanaged. It tells you everything you need to know about how this team is actually being run. It's not Stefanski calling the shots. It's ownership and management. And they're doing it from behind closed doors, away from cameras, in secret meetings that Lloyd says are directly responsible for Sanders' stunted development. And let's not pretend this is normal. A rookie quarterback being kept on ice for months with no transparency and no clear plan, that's not how functional organizations operate. That's how failing ones operate when they're more concerned about optics than performance. What's worse is a ripple effect. When you suppress a player like Sanders, someone who clearly has the talent to make an impact, you send a message to the rest of the locker room. You're telling them that it doesn't matter how hard they work or how much they prepare. If you don't fit the internal politics, you're getting sidelined. That's the kind of culture that breaks teams. And that's exactly what Lloyd is warning about. This isn't just a quarterback controversy. This is an organizational crisis. A full-on breakdown in trust, leadership, and accountability. And don't think for a second this ends with Sanders. If this is how they treat their top rookie quarterback, what does that say about everyone else on the roster? How many other players are being kept in the dark? How many other decisions are being made based on protecting egos rather than building a winning team? Lloyd made it clear. This is bigger than Sanders. This is systemic. A toxic culture of secrecy, manipulation, and fear that starts at the very top. And unless there's a complete overhaul, this will keep happening. New season, same dysfunction. And it's not like the Browns haven't had chances to fix it. Every few years, it's the same thing. A new quarterback, a new coach, a new hope. And every time the result is the same. Because you can't build a future when your present is being held hostage by people who are terrified of their past failures being exposed. That's what makes this so outrageous. They had a shot. Sanders could have been a fresh start, a reason to move forward. But instead of giving him that chance, they built a narrative around him that he's not ready, that he's still recovering, that he's not quite there yet. And maybe that would work if fans hadn't seen this exact storyline play out before. But they have. Over and over again. And thanks to Lloyd, they now know what's really going on. And now, the Browns are in damage control mode, but the truth is already out. The questions are being asked, and every non-answer from the team just confirms how deep this dysfunction runs. Because this isn't just a PR issue. This is about the integrity of the organization. And right now, there is none. Every level, from ownership to management to coaching, is involved in a cover-up to protect reputations at the expense of a player's career. And that's not just unfair, it's dangerous. For Sanders, for the team, for the credibility of the NFL. So the question is, what happens next? Does the franchise continue to pretend everything's fine while the fire burns behind the scenes? Or does someone finally step up and take responsibility? Because this isn't going away. Lloyd made sure of that. The scandal is too big. The damage is too obvious. And the fans? They're done waiting for answers. If you're watching this and you're fed up with the spin, you're not alone. If you think Sanders deserves better, you're right. If you think this entire front office needs a reset, you're saying what a lot of people are thinking. So let us know where you stand. Should Sanders demand a trade? Should the NFL step in? Or is this just the beginning of a much bigger implosion? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like if you're tired of the lies. Share it with someone still clinging to the Browns hype train, and subscribe. Because if you think this is a bombshell, wait until the next layer unravels. At this point, we're not talking about just a quarterback being mishandled. We're talking about the total disintegration of trust inside a franchise that has already exhausted the benefit of the doubt 100 times over. Jason Lloyd's revelations didn't just rattle the walls of Berea. They cracked the foundation. And what's wild is how silent the building has been since. No firm denial from Stefanski. No accountability from Andrew Berry. Not even a half-hearted PR statement from Jimmy Haslam to say, nothing to see here. That's silence. That's not confidence. That's panic. That's what it looks like when a front office gets caught red-handed and still believes they can spin their way out. But this isn't 2016 anymore. Fans aren't dumb. They're not sitting back and swallowing pre-written injury reports or believing the classic "he's not ready" excuse when it's been months. They know something's off, and Lloyd just said out loud what everyone else has been whispering. This franchise is burying Shedeur Sanders to protect itself. It's a pattern, and it's been building for years. Think about it. The Browns have had more quarterbacks than most teams have had kickers. Every time someone new comes in, there's a flood of hope, a few promising headlines. And then, right on cue, the sabotage begins. Whether it's coaching instability, front office turnover, or phantom injury management, the outcome is always the same. That player either fizzles out or gets shipped off, and the blame gets spread so thin that no one ever gets held responsible. But with Shedeur, this feels different. This isn't a guy struggling to learn the playbook. This isn't someone failing to perform in camp. This is a player who, by all accounts, is ready to go. And instead of letting him prove it, the Browns built a fortress of vague updates and hushed whispers. They've constructed a narrative so calculated it almost feels scripted. He's still recovering. He's progressing well. We're just being cautious. But progressing from what exactly? Because no one's seen a clear medical update. No one's seen evidence of a setback. In fact, reports from those around the team suggest Sanders has been healthy enough to play for weeks, if not longer. So if he's not playing, what's really going on? Lloyd's answer: he's being kept off the field on purpose. And when you hear that, everything else starts to make sense. The coaching chaos, the media manipulation, the quiet moves behind the scenes, like stripping Stefanski's play calling not once but twice, without any meaningful explanation. That doesn't happen in a stable environment. That happens when leadership is fractured, insecure, and desperate to hold on to control. Because if Sanders plays and he's good, that means heads need to roll. That means fans and media alike will start asking why he wasn't starting from the jump. Why was a franchise quarterback hidden behind a curtain of cryptic injury reports? Why did it take Jason Lloyd blowing the whistle for anyone to even ask? The Browns aren't afraid of Shedeur failing. They're terrified of him succeeding, because success from Sanders makes their own incompetence impossible to ignore. And if we zoom out for a second, this is about more than just one player. This is about culture, about the kind of environment the Browns have created, a place where development takes a back seat to politics, where transparency is optional, and where leadership exists only to shield itself from accountability. Lloyd laid it all bare. A team that's running on secrets. A coaching staff that's lost control. Ownership that intervenes when it suits them and vanishes when it doesn't. And a talented rookie QB stuck in the middle, being used like a bargaining chip in a fight he didn't start. And here's what no one in the Browns building seemed to understand. This is not going away. You don't get to bury a story like this. You don't get to delay a player's career and think people just move on when the next news cycle hits. Not when an NFL insider is on record saying this will be a 30 for 31 day. That's not just commentary. That's a forecast. A glimpse at the storm coming when more pieces start falling into place. Because if this is what's being exposed publicly, what's still hiding in the shadows? How many other questionable meetings? How many internal discussions about Sanders' readiness were really about optics? How many team officials knew this was happening and said nothing? And more importantly, how does Shedeur recover from this? Not physically, he's fine, but professionally, mentally. What happens to a young quarterback when he realizes his own team doesn't want him to succeed too quickly? It's a career-defining moment, and if this continues, it could very well be a career-altering one. How many rookies are handed the keys to a franchise only to realize the car was never meant to run? That's where we are, a fan base holding its breath, a player waiting for a shot that should have come weeks ago, and a front office too busy protecting its own image to notice the long-term destruction it's causing. And for what? Another year of instability? Another coaching shuffle in the offseason? Another press conference filled with empty words about evaluating everything and doing what's best for the team? Let's be honest. What's best for the team is to stop. Treating Shedeur Sanders like a risk and start treating him like the franchise quarterback he was brought in to be. But that would mean facing the truth. That would mean admitting the sabotage. Admitting the delays were strategic. Admitting that this was never about football, but about fear. And right now, the people in charge don't have the spine to do that. So the question is, how long does this continue? Because the longer they wait, the more obvious the sabotage becomes. The more damage is done to Sanders. The harder it becomes to rebuild trust in the locker room. And eventually, the story spins out of their control completely. Lloyd's expose is the start. It opened the floodgates. Now other reporters are watching. Other insiders are asking questions. And fans? They're furious. Rightfully so. They've been loyal through losing seasons, broken promises, and draft day disasters. And now they're seeing the same pattern playing out in real time, only this time, it's deliberate. So if you're still defending this front office, ask yourself, what's the end game here? Delay Shedeur starts so long that people forget he ever had momentum? Keep hiding behind recovery until the heat dies down? Good luck with that. Because the pressure is only building. The only way out is through. through transparency, through honesty, through change. And unless someone in leadership steps up and breaks the cycle, this franchise will stay exactly where it's always been, on the brink of greatness, ruined by its own refusal to get out of its own way. And here's the brutal truth. Shedeur Sanders was never given a real chance. Not because he lacked talent. Not because he wasn't ready. But because the Cleveland Browns were terrified. Terrified that he might expose everything they've done wrong. Jason Lloyd didn't leave room for interpretation. The franchise had become a machine designed not to develop players, but to protect itself from scrutiny. And when a player like Sanders walks in, gifted, prepared, and unwilling to play the PR game, he becomes a threat, not to the opposing defense, but to the egos in the front office. Think about that for a second. Instead of asking, how can we build around this kid? They asked, how can we contain him? And that right there's a scandal. That's what separates this from just another quarterback controversy. This is intentional suppression done behind closed doors, disguised as strategic planning, and it reeks of desperation. Let's talk about the injury management. Lloyd said it best. There's nothing normal about the way the Browns handled Sanders' back issue, flying a player across the country for treatment, instead of utilizing top-tier NFL medical staff, keeping him out of action week after week. Even as he appeared healthy and ready to go, it doesn't add up. Unless, of course, the goal was never to heal him. It was to hide him. And once you see that, everything else becomes clear. The cautious press briefings, the deflected questions, the refusal to commit to a timeline for his return. The Browns weren't managing an injury. They were manufacturing a cover story, one that would buy them time. Time to figure out how to protect their jobs. Time to manage the optics. Time to keep Sanders in the shadows long enough for the noise to fade. But here's the thing they forgot. The NFL isn't quiet anymore. Not in the era of plugged-in insiders and 24/7 fan discourse. You can't bury a story like this. And when someone like Jason Lloyd goes public with what insiders have been whispering for weeks, the whole illusion crumbles. And let's not give Stefanski a pass here either. Yes, he's been stripped of play-calling duties. Twice. Yes, he may be getting squeezed by Haslam and Barry. But he's still there, still going along with it, still showing up, headset on, as if he's in control. But if your front office doesn't trust you to call plays, what exactly are you doing? Either Stefanski is completely powerless, or worse, he's complicit. Because no matter how much interference there is from above, a real leader doesn't stand by while a promising quarterback gets buried for politics. A real coach speaks up. A real coach takes the heat. A real coach puts the team first, even if it costs him. And let's be clear, this didn't happen overnight. The dysfunction didn't start with Sanders. This is a franchise that has repeatedly blown up its quarterback room in the name of a fresh start. The difference now? We're not guessing anymore. We're watching it in real time with receipts. And the damage is already being done. How do you think this is affecting Sanders behind the scenes? He's a competitor. He's been preparing for this moment his whole life. And now, the very organization that drafted him is using him like a pawn, dangling him in front of fans as the future, while doing everything possible to delay that future from happening. What's that doing to his development? What's that doing to his confidence? And maybe more importantly, what's that doing to his trust in the organization? Because let's not forget, rookies talk, agents talk, veterans watch, and the league is small. If the Browns get labeled as a place that sabotages its own talent to protect the front office, they're not just hurting Sanders. They're poisoning their reputation for years to come. Why would a top draft pick want to go there? Why would a free agent quarterback take that phone call? Why would any young player trust that he'll be treated fairly in a system that clearly values politics over performance? And that's why this story matters. Because it's not just about one player getting shafted. It's about what that means to the entire culture. Because when you start sidelining potential out of fear, you've lost the plot. When your internal strategy revolves around controlling narratives instead of maximizing talent, you've stopped being a football team and started becoming a PR agency. And here's the part that should terrify Browns fans the most. This isn't even rock bottom. If they don't course correct fast, this could spiral into something even uglier. Shedeur Sanders isn't going to wait forever. He knows what he brings to the table. He knows his worth. And if this franchise continues to treat him like a liability instead of a leader, it's only a matter of time before he starts looking elsewhere. And if that happens, if Sanders ends up thriving somewhere else while the Browns are left holding a bag of excuses, again, how does this team recover from that? They won't. This will become a defining scandal of the Haslam era. Bigger than bad trades, bigger than losing seasons. Because this time, the failure wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Do you want a 30 for 30? That's how you get one. A quarterback sabotage, a coach stripped of power, an ownership group obsessed with secrecy, and a franchise so addicted to control that it couldn't see the future slipping through its fingers. And don't expect the media pressure to let up. If anything, Lloyd just opened the door for even more digging, more questions, more uncomfortable truths. And unless the Browns are ready to completely reset the leadership structure and own the damage they've done, they're only going to fall deeper into the pit they dug themselves. Because right now, they're not protecting a football operation. They're shielding a crumbling institution. And the cracks are already too wide to ignore. So where do they go from here? Do they finally give Sanders the keys and let him play? Or do they keep dragging out the charade, hoping fans will eventually stop asking questions? If they had any sense of direction, the answer would be obvious. Let the kid play. Let him lead. Let the chips fall where they may. Because at this point, it's the only shot they have at salvaging credibility. But if history is any indicator, they'll probably double down. They'll leak another injury update. They'll say Sanders needs more time. They'll trust Stefanski back out to the podium with another scripted line about long-term development. And by the time the season ends, the fans will still be waiting. Sanders will still be watching from the sideline, and the Browns will still be stuck in the one thing they seem truly committed to, protecting the lie. If you're as fed up with this as the rest of us, sound off in the comments. Do you think Shedeur should demand a trade? Can this franchise ever turn things around under this leadership? Is it time for a complete teardown at the top? Hit like if you're tired of watching teams waste talent. Share this with someone who still believes there's a plan. And make sure you're subscribed, because with the way things are going, the worst may still be ahead.